have you now.
You're fulfilling your destiny.
Show me again the power of the darkness.
D20 Radio, where gamers roll. D20radio.com. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, Vaders and Tusken Raiders, to the Knights of Ren, episode 112. With me are Rick and Jay.
Hey.
Is that a question? Yes, Jay.
These are not the droids you're looking for. Yes, welcome, gentlemen. This week we are going to be building a deck and then posting onto Card Game DB, our Facebook page, and out onto the interweb. So let's get to business. We are going to start with a very popular deck out here, and that is Darth Vader, Tusken Raider. So what do you guys think?
Yeah, I mean, it's a very popular deck, so, I mean, it's building it and seeing how it works is probably one of the better ways to combat it, I think. How about you guys?
Surprisingly, there's a lot of ways to make this deck, which is pretty cool, so it's almost disingenuous to just say, you know, I played against the Vader Raider deck, because there are aggro control flavors, some that focus on holocron, some don't, so we're gonna kind of go over, like, the decisions you need to consider to make a deck like this, and so on.
Sounds good.
Yeah, so the first thing I think we need to decide is, do we want to go for the all-out blue focus using the No Mercies and Power of the Force and such like that, or do we want to splash a little bit more of the yellow?
I know that a lot of people have complained that it's kind of dry for resources. So should we consider that first? Like, you know, what's the chance of seeing, say, disruption in the meta? You know, should we consider maybe throwing in some resource generation cards to help congregate some of the problems? Or should we just stick to, like, straight aggression, high damage, burst damage?
Personally, the way I see it is if you're running Vader, you want Vader to run as hot as possible, because it's the whole reason, like, you have him sitting in front of you. So I feel like there's better control options for different loadouts. I personally very much love the control that you get out of, like, Dooku with Jabba or Dooku with Kylo if you're trying to do the slower styles. So if you're doing Vader, I really think it's more in your want to go heavier on the blue, but still, there's still some punchy yellow cards I think we'll get to. And also, this deck, like, overwrites like crazy.
Yeah, so it sounds like we want to focus primarily in blue and just dip into yellow for the strongest cards we can find out of there.
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
Okay, so Sugi, you're building it, correct?
I am. We're using cardgamedb.com.
So guess start off, throw in the Elite Vader and Tusken Raider, and we'll go from there.
Yep, they're tacked in right now. So do we want to start with the ever-occurring holocron?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're going to use it.
Yeah, this deck uses holocron really well.
Definitely two of.
Yeah. Oh, we got two. Do we want to figure out the targets for holocron next, then?
Might as well.
Yeah, we can focus on upgrades for now.
Okay.
Kylo Saber is one of the best and strongest damage upgrades in the whole game, so it's a no-brainer for this deck, and I would definitely run two, as it's often a card it's a card I mulligan for, like, very aggressively, because, again, like, that +3 adds up really fast. If you go second, you can knock off those shields and punish them even further. If you go first, rather.
I mean, in the perfect world, when you're running Elite Vader and you can get Kylo's lightsaber onto him, you could deal 9 damage with no resources spent. So that's scary. I mean, you know, it's got a +2 modified, +3 modified, and then it does have the 3-for-1 side. But I mean, that's ridiculous. So good.
Yeah, so we're at 2 holocron, 2 Saber?
2 Kylos? Yep. Mm-hmm.
Might as well throw in the 2 regular Sabers too while we're at it, right?
Yep.
Okay. We kind of veered away from the holocron targets. You want to get back to that?
Sure. So 2 cards that I actually want to kind of, like, actually make you think heavily about if you want to add them is I don't like, and you guys feel free to contest me, I don't like Mind Probe with Vader. I know his activation ability of making your opponent discard is a May, But you want that. That's why it's, again, like when you're playing Vader, you want to Vader as hard as you can Vader. And I don't like Mind Probe in the deck unless you get the sick, like perfect open hand holocron. Then to me it's worth it. But in general, I don't like it.
I actually put holocron, or I will holocron Mind Probe onto the Tusken Raider, and then Raider first, and then if I get the special, pitch a card, resolve Mind Probe, hit him for a 5, and then hit them with Vader to mill him out the card. That's me personally, though.
And that makes Raider the target. That's a good argument for it. I guess to flip it, like, be careful with how you use it if we're adding it. I still like the card. I mean, the card, like, wins games very quickly.
Yeah, I think it's probably safe at this point to throw 2 in now. And then if we're tight for slots on something that maybe we want more of, or something we think is better. Also, I do agree with you, Jay, that Mind Probe and Vader together are somewhat counterintuitive, but like Sugi says, if you can get the Mind Probe off before you activate Vader, then it's obviously better that way. But keep in mind also the range, it's range damage on Mind Probe, and it costs a resource, so it's so counterintuitive, but it's so good at dealing damage. So
yeah, and also hitting for 4 isn't like the worst.
Oh no, absolutely not.
Also, don't forget it has a 2 discard side, which if you hit that, not a bad thing, because then you can proc Vader, hit him for 2 cards, and now they're out of 3 cards.
Yeah, and Vader also has some discard on his die too. So
I mean, it's not like amazing.
Or sorry, disrupt.
Yeah, it's not amazing, but I mean, there's still an opportunity. Like Vader has a 2 disrupt, Mind Probe has a 2 disrupt. 4 resources is no joke if you lose them. I mean, that's almost as bad as getting hit with like Occupation, almost, but it's still nasty.
All right, so for now, we're thinking 2.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's do it. The other card I wanted to bring up, though, and I want to hear you guys' thoughts on it. It really hurts to say, but in the capacity of Adro, I've fallen out of favor with Mobilize.
Oh, thank God. I thought you were going to say Force Choke.
Oh no, Force Choke's phenomenal.
I know.
And that's and the existence of Force Choke is ideally the aggro version of Immobilize. The trouble that I often run into with Immobilize is a lot of times you'll flip their die down, and if they reroll and get the damage back, you kinda have spent 2 resources on arguably a die that does nothing and doesn't increase your damage output. And so it's come up a few times in my testing that I feel like I lost some momentum, and I just lost slower than I could have possibly been doing with maybe even like force training. So it's a card that I go back and forth with. I still love the card, and in control decks it's amazing. It synergizes with Feel Your Anger, but I don't know. Like I don't know if we want it.
I submit to you this idea. I will trade you your Immobilize for Force Throw.
Well, yeah. I mean. We didn't get to it yet, but you can't argue against Force Throw. That card is bonkers.
Yeah, I'm with Jay on the Immobilize. I don't really like it too much in this deck. Like, this deck just wants to put out as much damage as it possibly can, as fast as it can, and it's great when you're chaining holocrons together and getting it out for free, and it's not costing you anything, but again, you're taking up actions to get it out, and then once it's there, it's just slowing, it's keeping you from losing, right?
Right. It's not helping you. It's not aggressively getting you towards winning. It's just keeping you alive longer.
And sometimes the damage it prevents does keep characters alive, which is relevant. But again, for the purposes of this deck, I think we're just doing a smash and grab.
I agree.
And I'm okay with leaving it out for now.
So let's talk about Force Throw.
Reversal on a stick. What it is.
That's fair. That's fair.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think you have plenty of room for 2 of those in here, especially with holocron shenanigans.
Oh, yeah.
That's the one problem I have it in light side, and I only run one of it when I'm playing a light side blue deck because of the 3 cost, but with holocron, it's almost null and void, right? So 2 of those.
Yeah,
Yep.
And for our listeners, a very, very cheeky and cruel combo you can do is if you have Force Throw and you have Force Choke out, and you've managed to roll their special sides, you can choke an opponent to turn one of their die to the highest value, and then in the same action throw it in their face. It's really brutal and rude.
Oh, no.
It's really good though.
Yeah, that is an awesome observation there.
Also, Force Choke and Force Throw have 2 specials, so you have a 33% chance of making that combo happen.
Well, not a 33, but yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, per card, but yeah, it goes. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
Yeah, math is tough.
My math is bad.
Moving on.
So yeah, force 2 force throw, 2 force choke.
Absolutely. So we're at 12 cards. So we got to start thinking on our feet here.
Quickly, let's not run past Force Choke here. A couple things to consider that Force Choke allows you. You can use Choke to manipulate Holocron on your other character. Your Choke doesn't let you choke yourself, but if you have it on Vader, you can choke the Raider and get him to do whatever you want. Obviously, it's incredibly good as a defensive option for turning your opponent's dies down or, as spoken, into force throws. But, Force Choke has 1,000,001 uses, and it's one of my favorite blue cards.
Yeah, and that's another thing you can chain the specials into as well, right? If you get lucky, you force choke the Raider to the special on the Holocron, resolve the special on the Holocron, roll out whatever you're putting out there, and if you happen to roll special on that, roll it straight out too, or resolve that one as well.
And what's nice is if you don't hit the special, you can still pitch a card and resolve Tusken Raider inside of that action. Right? No?
No.
No.
No. You have to do the Tusken Raider after you activate Tusken Raider. So
fair enough.
This way we're choking the Tusken Raider after he's already activated. But yes, I digress.
Fair enough.
So 2 force choke.
Yep, got it in there.
And that, you said, puts us at 12 cards?
We're at 12, so everything's blue. I think we've got most of the Holocron targets pretty much determined. Do we want to talk about one last target for Holocron, which would be force training?
I very much like force training. I see it as a good way to generate money in this deck, especially if you Holocron it out. It's a good alternative, as we've already discussed, not using Immobilize. It does deal damage. It's just a perfect fixer, I feel.
Yeah, I can definitely see that. Also, it does have a +2 melee on it, which, again, Immobilize doesn't do anything for the damage, and the 1 random range damage is relevant. So I'm perfectly fine with throwing another 2 of those in, too.
Yep, okay.
You also definitely, if you're running Holocron, you want your target count to be fairly high.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, you don't want to draw a Holocron and never see something to proc it to your field.
Here's where I think we may disagree on something. Since we're still in upgrades, especially dice upgrades, we're at 14 now, correct?
Mm-hmm, correct.
I want to ask if we want to run Gaffy Stick.
Ooh. All right, what's your argument for Gaffy Stick?
Gaffy Stick has crazy melee potential. It's got a 2 for 1 resource and a +2. The special allows you to bump a 1 melee to a 3, or possibly resolving a 3 for 1 from one of your other upgrades, like Lightsaber, and you don't have the resource, it allows you to resolve that still. So I'm pro Gaffy Stick, but it does cut into the blue cards when you're talking about Power of the Force and No Mercy later on.
I like Gaffy Stick a lot, and again, using it special also helps you resolve tricky modified sides that get singled out by your opponent's removal often. There's also another card that fights for this exact slot too, which is also Flamethrower, which is a very, very good melee card, but it's also expensive, and we already have 4 lightsabers and Force Throw, although you can cheat Force Throw into play with Holocron. I recommend, if you can hardcast it, just get Force Throw on the table. Don't sit on that card if you can. So I think we should come to a decision on one of these 2 upgrades. Definitely not both, but one's the cheaper option, which you can just slap on as your first action. The other one requires a little money.
I have 2 thoughts, and we can determine which card we want based on those. Do we want more damage or more resource economy?
So this is the big sticky thing with Vader Raider, and that is the resources. So I'm going to lean towards the resource side of it. The cheaper upgrade if I'm running either one of them myself. So
I actually agree. I'm, as I've said to these guys, I'm probably the biggest proponent of Flamethrower, but I do think that it adds too much cost weight to this deck. Gaffy's quick, dirty. It makes Tusken Raider like just terrifying, like out of the gate. It gives you more turn one options. I think Stick's better. There are decks that definitely made Flamethrower shine, but I actually think it hurts your curve too much.
And that's the biggest reason, like, we have these kinds of discussions is both cards do what we want them to do. They deal damage, they get us closer to killing the opponent faster. But we have to look at the design of the deck and take a look at the shortcoming, which is, right now, a lot of cards are very expensive. This deck does not produce a lot of resources, so every play has to be as efficient as possible. And with Gaffy Stick, it's 2 resources, which is good because Flamethrower is 3. It has redeploy, so you can move it if you need to. It's got bonus, a +2 modified. It's got the things you need. But for me, the biggest thing about Gaffy Stick that's good is the special effect says that what you can do is when you resolve it, you can remove one of your dice showing melee damage, be it modified or base, to deal 3 damage to a character. This is great because you can turn blue face die into real damage, and if you say happen to roll out a dice like a 3-for-1 on Kylo's lightsaber, you may not have 1 resource, but you can still use this effect to get that 3 damage off for no resources spent. So it helps the curve of the deck, it gets the damage done that you need, and it's 1 less expensive than Flamethrower, so it hits a lot of points that we want for this deck to do very quickly.
The main reason that special side really exists is it's like disgusting synergy with Tusken Raider himself, where you activate him and you roll his regular die and then his stick, and you have a good chance of showing some melee sides and then just bopping them. Especially if you've rolled Vader first, and then you follow up with Tusken, and you can also pick from Vader's dice too.
So do we want to run 2 or 1?
That's also a legitimately good question. I think 2.
I agree with 2.
Okay, I can deal with 2. What does that put our numbers at?
We're at 16. So now I have a card I personally run in my deck. I don't think it's super amazing, but I think it gives Vader Raider a lot of reliability, and that's Datapad. My big argument for that is, first of all, the fact it can crank out resources really well. But I really like the special on it, because what Datapad does is it says, turn 1 of your dice to a side not showing damage, and that means you can proc specials like crazy. Or you can hit those discard sides, or if you need resources, you can make resources to pay for, say you roll out a 3-for-1 on Ren's lightsaber, and you don't have any money, you can roll, use Datapad to change another die to something that makes money, and Vader and Raider both have a 1 resource side. It's not necessarily helping your aggression, but it is helping you pay for the aggression. So, I mean, I'm open to your comments on that.
I do love Datapad. It's just, I think it's not, and I agree with you, the resources are an issue, but I think we're trying to build a deck to where we don't need as many resources, if you follow me. Mm-hmm. And another thing it has going against it is that it's gray, right? It's a neutral card. It's not helping with what we're looking, or with the other things that we're going to get to that are really the key components of putting out immense damage in this deck.
That's totally fair.
And it doesn't do damage itself. Now, granted, you can use that special to change Kylo Ren's saber to its special and resolve it, especially if they have shields out. It's an option. I do love it in a lot of decks, but in this deck, I'm kind of against it myself.
Yeah, personally, I would want us to run. There are 2 blue options available that do help with resource generation. And although I agree, Datapad is a disgusting, almost every deck staple. This is one of the times where I actually don't want it, as hard as it is to say, and I would rather run Binds All Things, or personally, I just like Enrage better by a large margin. Like, Enrage is very, very fast, but we can get to those, but I veto the data.
That's fine. No, I expected that to be vetoed.
Yeah.
But it was good to bring up. And if you are missing like some of these components, or you don't like, you're not into the Power of the Force synergy, or like you're not your deck is more yellow than what we're making, and you're not doing the No Mercy plan, run Datapad. That's where it's good. We're trying to do blue synergy. if you're not doing blue synergy, put in the datapad.
Yeah.
So in my personal deck in real life, I actually run double datapad, double cunning, so I can proc like gratuitous amounts of specials all the time, and it works really well. It's, I don't think, necessarily as explosive as the No Mercy build that we're doing, but it's really consistent, and it's really nice because I can proc like double holocron with cunning. I can do datapad into holocron. I can get like lightsaber to go off multiple times with datapad or cunning to do lots of unblockable damage. So it's really, really flexible, but it's not nearly as like, here's 8 damage in one turn. It's more like, here's like 4 unblockable damage. Here's 4 more unblockable damage. Here's 7 regular damage. So it does depend on how you're building it, but you know, it's really fun.
Yeah.
I prefer that setup more in the like that's, to me, when you're running it like that, you want like the Vader Jabba or the Jabba Dooku, because then like his Jabba turns and rerolls like every freaking die over and over again, and I just feel like datapad is like a lot harder to use, and like neither of these characters generate a lot of money, so it's harder to get the plus money side, and neither of them focused, so it's harder to get to the special side reliably, and it does have 2 misses. So again,
Right.
like, it's tougher. It's still like literally one of the best cards in the game.
Oh yeah.
So what are we at upgrade or dice generation cards right now?
So we've got 16 upgrades, which means we have 16 dice available essentially.
Okay, so we're running a little high on dice right now. Do you think we should come back to that if we have other spots available?
I think we should move to events, and then the remainder will be our supports. So we are certainly doing No Mercy.
Yeah, let's talk about that, since we've been practically discussing this is like one of the linchpin burst damage cards of the game.
So No Mercy says it's an uncommon, cost 2 for villain blue. Discard any number of blue cards from your hand, then resolve one of your dice showing damage, either melee or ranged, and increase its value by 1 for each card that you just discarded. So what this is doing is taking Vader's, say, blue, or Vader's 3 melee damage, discarding 4 cards from your hand to turn it into 7 right off the bat, right?
And that's the maximum you can get in this deck, just so you know, unless we're going to run like Emperor's Favor.
And I don't think we will.
Yeah, I don't think so either.
So, yeah, definitely 2 of those, right?
Yeah.
Anybody disagree? The other one we were talking about is Power of the Force. And that one is a 1 resource neutral event that says spot a blue character and to turn a... Oh, sorry, let's use the Force. Wow. Power of the Force is resolve one of your dice, treating its value equal to the number of blue upgrades you have in play. So with this, with Holocron getting out an insane number of blue ability upgrades, Holocron itself, and a couple of other ways that you can up this number for pretty cheap that we may get to, you can definitely use this to turn like a one damage die to easily 4 to 6 damage.
This card also does cool things in the deck where you can like ramp up discard sides, you can ramp up disrupt sides. It's a very good multi-tool. The dream is obviously turning low damage sides into 6 hitters. You can't always do that. So if you can get to 4, even 4 is generally a good sweet spot, a good finisher when they're trying to evaluate the dice you haven't played, and then suddenly you're just like, oh, 4 you? And they're like, what? Like, it's a really cool card to screw with dice math.
Yeah, I love this card with Force Training. Turning that 1 ranged into a lot more when they think you may try to re-roll that, or even turning the focus side on Force Training to like a 4 focus, and then switching all your dice into your heaviest melee damage that you can get to.
Right. And something I wanted to back up and talk about No Mercy for a split second. When you have a deck that's so tight on resources, No Mercy is it's a heavy investment for a couple reasons. You're using 2 resources, which is your entire resource pool per turn. And in order to get the maximum amount out of this card, you're going to resolve this card and discard 4 cards out of your hand. So you've used up all the cards in your hand, you used up all the resources for your turn. So in my opinion, it really needs to count. Like that 7 damage should kill someone, because if it doesn't, you're out of resources and you're out of card economy. And that's really painful to be at a point where you didn't kill anybody, especially with the fact that there's potential to see second chance or field medic, which can really hurt that you've done all this work and someone can keep their character alive or pull off damage that you've painstakingly spent a lot of resources to accumulate over time.
Yeah, I like it as a closer, which is something that if we get to tight spots, it's something that I'm willing to actually go to a 1-of in this deck. But yeah.
I guess what I'm saying is don't play No Mercy turn 1 unless there's just you're guaranteed to kill someone, because you're losing so much without killing someone. I don't feel like that's a wise play.
On the same note, though, do watch out for discard die sides. No Mercy is like one of your best moves, period. And if you're being threatened by discard, that is a reason to consider like going in early, because it really sucks to lose your No Mercy.
Yeah. You're saying if they're showing a lot of discard and you think they're going to pull it on you to go ahead and do an early No Mercy on there anyway?
That's a good tactical move.
Yeah, it's something to be aware of. Like, as I've played these decks and I've tried to play the odds. I mean, it's tricky because a lot of times it's more in the middle of the turn and I've already spent my money, but it's more of just like be aware. Like No Mercy is definitely like it's one of your finishers. It's one of your biggest plays. Like just treat it with respect and try to keep it safe.
Try to keep it secret.
All right, moving on.
We were at Power of the Force, so I'm going with 2 of these myself.
Yep. So we're sitting at 20 out of 30 right now.
Okay. We're going to continue with events. Intimidate is another one that I would throw out there.
Go ahead and talk about why, just because, first of all, let me talk about what it does. So Intimidate is a 0-cost event for villains. It says remove all shields from a character.
So the reason why I think it's worth looking at in this deck is that shields are one of the ways to fight against this deck. And right now, Qui-Gon is having a bit of a resurgence in the Facebook groups. People seem to like him right now, so you may see a lot of them. And if Qui-Gon and the rest of the shields start getting going in this, you'll have a tough time fighting through it.
I'd actually like to talk about another deck I think is much scarier than Qui-Gon, and that's Han Solo and his ability to make shields for days.
I recently in my testing, I kind of just laugh at Han Solo because I just let him get 3 shields and then I kill all his friends and all of his ambushes and all of his synergies. I mean, granted, a lot of the people that have been throwing Han at me aren't playing Han Blue; they're playing other combinations. So I don't have to be as afraid of Riposte. But I've noticed one way to deal with Han, and granted, he hits really hard, so you have to respect him, but I kind of just laugh and like pick apart his buddies while he just sits there on his 3 precious shields while his friends die.
So would you run Intimidate in this with those decks being prevalent?
So my thoughts are, first off, we do have 2 cards in this deck that are kind of like shield busters. Actually, 3 cards. We obviously have the Kylo Ren saber, and that dreams of shields. Give it shields. It's why it lives. Force Choke sneaks the damage past shields. It's only 1, but 1 adds up. And also, spoiler alert, backup muscles going to be in this deck. There's no contest there. So
don't forget about lightsaber.
Yeah, regular lightsaber also sneaks right past too. So you do have options. And while again, like shields kind of suck, the point I was going to make is I'm not saying like Intimidate's bad or don't run it, but in my mind, like I've already afforded our deck like the 2 backup muscles, so that puts us at 22. And then there's 2 events that I feel are like guaranteed adds before we think about Intimidate. And the first one is Use the Force, which is a bit obvious. Pay 1 resource, spot a blue, turn a die to whatever side you want. You can use it on your stuff, use it on your opponent's stuff. So you can use it on Vader and do 3 damage. Don't walk into just like removal, obviously, but it fixes your die turn your Kylo Saber to special side to eat up those shields. Turn your opponent's die to misses so that their combo doesn't work all of a sudden. It's the card that does everything. And then the other card to think about is Force Strike, which has Vader on it himself, and honestly, he's the only character I like using the card with. I mean, it's kind of meant for him. But Force Strike, you pay 1, you flip a blue die to a damage side of your choice, and then resolve it immediately. And so you pay 1 and you immediately just wallop them for 3. I feel like those, for our aggro purposes, but also use the Force does everything. That eats up 4 more slots right there. So now we're getting tight, is my point. I can see Intimidate going in this deck, but we're running out of slots.
Here's a couple things I wanted to say about Intimidate. I think it's really good. I think Enrage eats the Intimidate slot, personally, because it just gives you 1 resource for 1 damage. But I actually was going to propose On the Hunt in lieu of Intimidate, because that die is ridiculous. It does prevent... it is a yellow die, and if we tacked it into the deck, we would have 2 Gaffy Stick, 2 On the Hunt, 2 Backup Muscle, so 6 of the cards would be yellow, and the rest would be blue. I mean, it's not... I run On the Hunt on my deck just because it chomps shields, and you can get rid of dice, which I think is pretty good, but this is not necessarily, has to be in the deck.
So I'm gonna veto for a couple of reasons. One, it's yellow. 2, it's a control card, and as we just discussed, like, this deck does have shield answers. One thing that I've learned recently about using that card that kind of drives me insane, I like On the Hunt. It doesn't make money. It doesn't have a resource side. And that's kind of like, I just kind of beat my head against the table sometimes. Like, that actually, I hold it very much against that card that it doesn't generate resources. And that hurts.
That's fair.
Okay. So, yeah, I had thought about On the Hunt too. But again, when we're trying to squeeze as much blue into the deck, I kind of...
No dice.
Yeah, I don't want to run it. Again, with all of what y'all are saying, it does exactly what y'all were talking about. And in a different deck, I think it's easy slot in there. For Intimidate, I'm fine with leaving it out. I'm also fine with, if we have room, throwing 1 in there. And I'm also fine if people at home don't have something else in here. And I think it's a very easy to slot in there as a one of, especially if your people you're playing with run a lot of shields.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Like, it's very, very strong, and it has a great place. It just depends on if you want to run it or not.
Yeah, I mean, if you can get a read for your community and your meta, and like shields are everywhere, like, then it goes up to like a no-brainer category. But I personally don't tend to see shields in a lot of places. Villains don't tend to get very shield crazy. It's more of a hero thing. Not saying, there aren't decks that do it, but, and also, I always laugh when my opponent, makes me go first and I have Intimidate in hand, because that's just funny. Oh, there's 2 shields? Nope, we're on the same page now. Thanks for playing.
Oh, that's not nice.
Yeah. So, yeah, I agree with Rick. Like, it's definitely, it's probably not going to make the cut in our deck, but it's probably the card, like, waiting in line if you're short something, for sure.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, definitely, like, because I think we're pretty high on the dice anyway. Like, if you only have 1 Kylo Saber, you can throw an Intimidate in there, instead of just trying to find that other one. I like 2 Kylo Sabers in this deck, but again, it's a legendary and product is scarce right now. So if you can't find it, it's something you can do, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, so we're at 26 out of 30. We've got 10 events, 16 upgrades.
All right. So we have 2 technically slots left, right?
I think we have 1 because we had initially talked about It Binds All Things.
Exactly. That's what I was getting at.
So It Binds All Things is a phenomenal support. It's a 1 resource neutral card, and it states, before you play a blue upgrade, you may exhaust this support to decrease its cost by 1. And I believe we agree that if you have 2 of these out, it stacks and you can reduce a card by 2.
Absolutely. So 2 of these?
Oh yeah, I mean, you could turn a lightsaber into a 1-drop. That's phenomenal.
For me personally, I'd still run Enrage over it, but I do see the value. I think the hard choice is literally this or Enrage based on what you're trying to do and what your play styles are. I find this card to be slow, which is fine. Obviously, this deck has like 1,000,001 things to hit with it, so I'm not saying it's bad. I'm also more used to using Enrage because I started with the Kylo starter and I didn't know it Binds All Things was a card for the longest time, so I'm kind of biased. But also, it Binds All Things doesn't deal damage to you. Like, that's definitely a plus, you know? So I feel like specifically for this exact slot, it's one or the other.
I like it as, if I'm going to play a 2-cost upgrade, it's essentially free. It just costs me an action, right? So if I'm maybe planning on playing a Force Training, I play out It Binds All Things first for 1. Then next action I exhaust Binds All Things and play the Force Training for 1. So I just got the Force Training or the It Binds All Things for free, essentially, right?
Right. And then the next time you play it, you essentially netted 1 resource, and so on and so forth.
So
right.
just for the alternative perspective, I'm not saying this is better or what you said was wrong, but like in that scenario, that helped you get the cheaper card out, which is good. The advantage Enrage does is Enrage lets you play your 3-cost stuff, your lightsabers, turn 1, and get them on your character before you even rolled everything. That's why I like it. Again, I'm not saying it's better, because It Binds All Things sets you up economically for more turns, and this is a deck that has money problems. My way is the explosive way. The more get lucky, the more aggro. It Binds All Things is the slightly slower, but again, like economically safer, and you probably make more money in the long run. So again,
So I have something for you. How about this? I'm going to go crazy.
Oh no.
I'm going to say, how about 2 Enrage, 1 It Binds All Things.
that's spicy.
Oh.
I do like what Jay was saying on being able to have that first turn Kylo Saber out.
I was just going to say, why not both? But that works too.
Yeah. So I think with what Jay was saying, with being able to get that 3-cost upgrade out first turn, sacrificing a point of damage to you, I like it. And then also keeping in mind that the deck does have trouble with resources, having that long-term gain for the times that you get it out with the It Binds All Things, I think is worth it as well. And another shot against It Binds All Things, it doesn't help you pay for your melee damage sides either. I'm good with 2-1 on that.
Yeah, I like that spread. So now
Okay.
we have a 1 floating. I have a suggestion. There's one more event I really like, especially against Poe. Poe's my nemesis. I really like Isolation, which is an event. You pay 1 and you can remove a character die. This card gets mileage more or less depending on who you're up against. If you're playing against a squad of a bunch of, smaller characters, like obviously you can break chains and like they're like modified synergies, but I really like Isolation strictly because you can play it if you're going second in a round and be able to respond before some of your slower options, like cards like He Doesn't Like You. You have to have a die in play. So if you're going second for the round, you can't respond fast enough unless you're Django. So things like that. I like Isolation. It's hard to fit in this deck. It is a control card. If anything, again, it's in the same tier as Intimidate, as like definitely a runner-up, definitely something to play if you're short on some of the cards we've suggested. But I really love Isolation, especially against Poe.
Yeah, I mean, I like it too. And for one, just looking back at what we've added, we're very light on dice manipulation in this deck right now. So, I mean, we're not running
Feel Your Anger.
Yeah, we're not running Feel Your Anger. We're not running Immobilize. So I can see adding that last spot as a dice manipulation card, and I think it falls into either Feel Your Anger or Isolation, and Isolation is cheaper.
Well, they're both exactly the same cost.
Are they?
Isolation and Feel Your Anger are one.
I was thinking of He Doesn't Like You being 0 cost.
That is true. He Doesn't Like You is 0.
It's yellow though, so not for this deck. It's good. Like
It is
it's
good.
so good. And again, if you're playing a yellower version, like definitely consider it. I do want to talk about Feel Your Anger quickly. One thing that I've learned, again, it's another card I played a lot in practice. I played a lot of Dooku lately. Feel Your Anger is a feast or famine kind of card, meaning like when it's good, it's good. When it's bad, it's terrible. And I'm slowly falling out of favor for it, largely due to the fact that it usually doesn't hit enough stuff exactly when I need it. It's compared to like Isolation, sometimes the hero die isn't the one that like is the scariest sitting in front of you, but usually it does something to reduce whatever they're trying to do. So I find Isolation more reliable. I mean, when Feel Your Anger hits, like, it's devastating. I mean, it fits the card. It also does combo with Force Choke and Immobilize, but again, when you use those cards to turn their dice to blanks, they're more likely to just respond and reroll anyway before you can get the Feel Your Anger out. I think it's a good card, but if you're struggling and you want to get more defensive options in your deck, do look at that one and try and think about maybe something else. You know, maybe sometimes even a Mind Trick could be a reasonable change, although that does cost more. But just be mindful of Feel Your Anger, otherwise you're going to be the one being mad.
Yeah, I like Feel Your Anger more in a Vader Jabba deck where you're discarding a lot more, and then they can't re-roll the blanks that you leave them.
Okay, and then we know what the last card in the deck is, and that's going to be Backup Muscle.
Oh, what are we at with all that?
Well, we're exactly at 30 if we add 2 Backup Muscles into the mix.
Oh, okay. And we had already temporarily added those spots, right?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
So I know, Jay, you are a really big fan of this card, so why don't you talk about why is it so good?
This card wins games on its own. It's good early, it's good late. You don't have to play it very fast, which is kind of nice. You can sit on it and see how the turn goes and like resolve things as they come. And then if you're not the one fighting for the battlefield, you can just, slip it in and be like, all right, I'm gonna, end my turn, play, deal 1 damage, go into next round. If their guy is walking wounded and sitting on 1 health, they have no incentive to even roll the character out because he's dead on board. The moment they do that, you kill him. You don't have to do that very quickly. Like it's nothing on you to like fire first, so to speak. So it's just this really gross, almost control-y damage card. It's unpreventable damage, so it beats up Dooku. Dooku can't use his effects against it because for the purposes of moved damage, if you're not aware, as this question comes up a lot, move damage is not dealt, it's already considered to be dealt. That's how it's on the table. And so when you move it, it's not a dealt state, therefore Dooku can't discard a card to respond to it. So keep that in mind. But 3 free damage where you want it, when you want it, against shields for 1. It's like I said, there's decks that run all blue and just run this card for that exact reason.
So what does that leave us at? Can you go ahead and just list out the deck for us?
Yeah, so we've got 2 Vaders, 1 Raider. In the events, we've got 2 No Mercy, 2 Power of the Force, 2 Use the Force, 2 Enrage, 2 Force Strike, 1 Isolation. In the support row, we've got 1 It Binds All Things and 2 Backup Muscle. And then in the upgrade section, we've got everything's a playset. So Sith Holocron, Kylo's Lightsaber, Mind Probe, Force Throw, Force Choke, Force Training, and Gaffy Stick. But we're missing a battlefield.
Yeah, that's the one thing, huh? I'm going to propose Rebel War Room.
Uh-oh.
Doesn't make much sense in the thematic scene here, but being able to resolve one of your dice if it has a resource cost and not having to pay for it is something that does come up on this deck. We're building it towards being able to resolve it, but it's also something that a battlefield, it's not going to hurt you when your opponent claims it. What do you guys think?
So I actually play this one kind of weird. I'm personally running the Separatist base, which says when you claim it, each opponent chooses and deals 1 unblockable damage to one of their characters. But I would also submit that Imperial Armory is very helpful because that card states play an upgrade from your hand, decreasing its cost by 1. So Imperial Armory definitely helps with the resource problem. A Rebel War Room does the same. It just translates to die faces. I just like Separatist base because unblockable damage is unblockable. I mean, sure, your opponent gets to pick where it goes, but the card helps push the aggro deck to do damage. Everything it does is damage. If it's the battlefield, it's damage. If it's an event, it's damage. If it's an upgrade, it's damage.
And I am going to submit a fourth option. So one thing that I've learned a lot personally about battlefield choices is something that Rich brought up. You got to be careful with battlefields that can hurt you. Ones like Emperor's Throne Room, sometimes like you play that against a Crime Lord deck and you brought it, or you both brought it in that case, typically, and then it's guaranteed to be in play, and then you get Crime Lorded and you're dead. You just have to be careful about that. We're not suggesting that one, but just like scenarios where it can bite you. But something to consider. I don't think we're gonna pick one for the list, but like keep all 4 of these in mind because they all do very specific synergistic things with the deck. I posit Junkyard for the reasons that I believe as time goes on, especially if Vader Raider sticks around, but even just decks in general, I think Disarm is going to be in anything yellow. Obviously, it's not in this one, although it's a perfectly good card in this deck too. And so Junkyard gets your holocrons back. Junkyard gets you more blue to put in your hand to make No Mercy stronger and keep you from decking yourself out as quickly.
You're talking about Starship Graveyard, right?
Oh, yeah. Gosh darn it. Yes, Starship Graveyard, not Junkyard.
Yeah, we got you, though.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
Being able to just recur for these reasons. Again, the big one is getting Holocron back if they make you discard it, or if they disarm it. It's like, okay.
That's actually a really good idea. I didn't consider that as an option. I'm going to veto my Separatist base.
Okay. I was going to say Imperial Armory, why personally I wouldn't run it. I have a feeling this deck will end the turn when you're ready to claim the battlefield without any resources left. So
yeah, you're probably right.
The chances of you actually triggering Imperial Armory are relatively low unless you're playing your entire turn around it.
That's fair. I agree. I actually think I like Graveyard a lot based on what Jay was saying.
Yeah, I mean, I can definitely go with it. I mean, Graveyard, only bad thing about it is people tend to build their deck around Graveyard. So, you're giving them another option of being, or you're basically giving those people that build around their deck for the Starship Graveyard, you're going to get a guaranteed Starship Graveyard, and they're going to get 2 shields. So that's my down vote for Graveyard, but I can definitely see it.
It's tough because like War Room hilariously is anticlimactic. Well, it's also not thematic to have Darth Vader with a Tusken Raider, but we won't go into that. It's tough because it's a valid point. Rebel War Room lets you have a lot of 3-for-1s. Tusken Raider has a 3-for-1. Kylo's lightsaber, the regular lightsaber, Mind Probe, Gaffy Stick has a 2-for-1. So you have a lot of potential to hit a pay side, and you might not have that resource. And Rebel War Room basically says, don't worry about it, man. I mean, all those dice we just talked about, they're free. So,
well, one of them, but yeah,
one of them. But if the opportunity arises where you're sitting on a, Kylo's lightsaber, it's a 3-for-1. I have no resources. Claim the battlefield, deal 3 damage. You could, first of all, that's a lot of damage. Second of all, you could kill someone, and now they have to worry about that die. Or if they're not paying attention, you can get someone into striking distance, so that the next turn when you go first, you roll Tusken Raider, get some damage, pitch a card, and you can kill someone before they can even react. So I could definitely see Rebel War Room for good for aggro.
Yeah, and I'm fine with for the purposes of this discussion, sticking with Starship Graveyard since I'm outvoted 2-1. But again, like Jay said, there are plenty of options for this deck, and it's kind of a spice for flavor. You know what I mean? So you pinch a little Imperial Armory in here if you really want to, a little Rebel War Room, or a Starship Graveyard, or a Separate Base, and you're going to have effectively the same deck, and any one of those can really help you. So I'm okay with Starship Graveyard to close it out with.
Okay, that's fine. So that's the whole deck. 30 cards, characters, battlefield. So let's go over we've talked about, strengths and weaknesses, but let's actually go like into what you're going to deal with as a player. Like when you're facing this, like strengths, weaknesses, what should you play as your better choices? If you're if you're facing off against this, what can you do to beat it?
Well, first off, when you're the pilot, things you want to try to do, like a good thing to look for in your opening hands, you are digging as hard as you can for either, like if you can get any one of these, you're pretty good to go, but you either want Force Throw, Kylo's lightsaber, and especially Holocron. Those are the ones that I would like mulligan towards. Enrage is super good early in the game. Regular lightsaber is perfectly feasible and strong. If it's in your opening hand and you don't have the rest of them, I would consider keeping that and throwing everything else. Stuff like No Mercy, you want that later, so pitch it. Power of the Force, pitch it. Mind Probe, if you don't have the Holocron, I would pitch it, although there are arguments to be made to upgrade into it. Just like use your best discretion there.
Yeah, I completely agree there. You want to throw those closers back to dig for more damage early on. Throwing the No Mercies and the Power of the Forces back, just trying to dig for things that set you up for the early game.
Something that a lot of people don't tend to do, and that we definitely recommend doing, is if you're in the middle of the game and you're sitting on cards that don't help you, don't keep them in your hand. If you have a card in your hand that's mediocre and you have the option to discard it to draw more, you do have to have discretion and you do have to make a wise decision, but it's always better to get rid of a card that's not doing anything in your hand in the hopes of drawing something that can do something. Because it would be terrible if you're sitting on, a hand that's like a Kylo's lightsaber, regular lightsaber, Mind Probe, Force Throw, and a Gaffy Stick. Well, you might need to get rid of some of those in order to find maybe, a Holocron. You might need to find some Enrage to pay for these cards, things like that.
Yeah, absolutely. And as far as playing this deck, how do y'all feel on aggressive rerolls to get as much damage as you can out of it?
I feel that it depends on the state of the game. I wouldn't do it early game just because you don't want to get rid of your good cards too quickly, and then like mid to late game you just don't have access to the damage you need. I mean, unless you get really lucky and say turn 1 you roll out 6 damage on Vader and the 3-for-1 on Tusken Raider and you kill someone, okay, sure. Maybe turn 2, if you have really bad rolls, you can pitch a bunch of cards to get the damage. I guess it just really depends on the situation and where you are in the game state.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
I would say do it if you have like the coveted Kylo Saber or the Force Throw in play already. Like if you have power cards, I say go for it, but if you're still middling or like, I wouldn't so much do it with like Gaffy Stick or even regular lightsaber. Regular lightsaber's kind of weird because it's only half of its sides could deal damage, so you have a 50% chance of it like not doing what you want. It's still a great card. It still like does a lot of things, but like compared to Kylo Saber, like that one more side that does very nasty things is something to always keep in mind when you're comparing those two. Both still very strong. Again, like, is someone in reach that you could potentially kill? Is it worth like going all in now instead of saving up, for that No Mercy later? What are you discarding? What battlefield are you fighting over? And even one thing to consider, especially with the Vader Raider deck, is it's very, very good for you to go first at the start of a round as an aggro deck. So if you've kind of like, air quotes, like hit your stride and you've done what you can this turn, consider not like try to get a read on when your opponent might go for the battlefield, try to undercut them, and just get your dice out again and like swing hard if you're not risking either of your guys dying, obviously.
Is it worth sacrificing, say, like if you have a random range die sitting out there, dealing that 1 extra damage to be able to take the battlefield?
No. I mean, personally, if it's between taking the battlefield or 1 damage, take the battlefield, because you will probably deal way more than 1 damage because you get to go first.
Yeah,
Me too. I think that as well. So I just wanted to make sure that was in consensus before throwing it out there.
And the reason I say that is primarily because of the Tusken Raider. Like, when I play Vader Raider, unless there's some good reason Vader needs to go first, I will always roll Tusken Raider, because if he hits that stride and he can do lots of damage, but the nice thing is you can pitch a card to resolve one of his or his equipment die, and sometimes rolling out, like we were talking about Mind Probe, like turn 1, hey, Mind Probe special. Yeah, I'll ditch a card to deal 5 damage before the opponent can stop me, sure. Or, I mean, even with Gaffy Stick or something where you can get, I mean, I try and get at least 2 or more damage off of Raider for the card, just because losing a card in this deck does matter, but the ability to plink someone so quickly, now they have to worry about, hey, if Vader rolls 6 damage, this guy's dead. So they can't just, willy-nilly play however they want. Like, they have to consider, do I roll this character now because he might die? Do I roll my other character and try and save him? Like, do I keep my resources for some kind of control card? So it does depend on the situation, but I would definitely say if it's between 1 damage or going first next turn, go first next turn if you can.
Yeah, any other tips for playing the deck?
I did want to go over some of the more technical details.
Yeah,
because I'm a math geek. So if you go to Card Game DB, you can build your decks, and they have these really cool stats at the bottom of your deck. So we have 4 cards that cost 0. We have 10 cards that cost 1 resource, 8 cards that cost 2 resources, 6 cards that cost 3, and 2 cards that cost 4. So you can look at that curve. And mathematically, like if you look at your hand and you're seeing, 1s and 2s, that's very, very common. Your deck is, 53% upgrades, 36% events, and 10% supports. So you have to understand sometimes, like, if you're looking at, hey, I have to discard a card to Vader Raider, and I've got 1 of my supports in my hand, there's only 3 in the deck. So you might want to get rid of maybe an upgrade or event since you have more of those and play sets of them. Just stuff to think about when you have options of cards to pitch.
How about we talk about how to beat it?
Well, I mean, if you rip it in half, that's pretty functional.
That'll get you disqualified. I think you actually technically lose there, right?
That's probably frowned upon in the community. So more on that later. But I mean, the first thing that comes to mind is disruption. Control decks really hurt this deck if you can flip the die sides to like pay sides where you just don't have any money for it. Or if you have like Jabba who's got Buku Disrupt, I mean, that's very painful to lose resources that you desperately need to pay for these cards.
Yeah, my favorite thing against this deck is Force Misdirection out of blue. Being able to, roll some blue melee sides and for 1 cost be able to wipe out their 6 melee damage dice, basically saving me a whole turn there. That's one of my favorite things to do. Again, disrupting the Vader Raider player is gonna go a good distance on there. Discard somewhat, I think, is okay against it, but it's very resilient to it, especially with the number of copies of things that we have going on in here. Jay, any thoughts?
You definitely have to kind of fight this deck as fast as it's coming at you, because if you try to play it slow but you're also playing an aggro deck, like, you basically have to very quickly make the decision of who you're trying to kill. Getting rid of Vader first, lets you breathe easier, but it's a much taller mountain to climb. But other things to consider, because I've had to fight this deck a few times. I'm telling you right now, if you're playing yellow, like, Disarms the Dream, if you can pop off the Kylo Saber, if you can pop off Holocrons, Gaffy Sticks, whatever, it does a lot to slow this deck down. Target Vader's dice with your removal, obviously, as best as you can, and it's pretty much the general tips.
Yeah, and to kind of piggyback on what you were saying, I almost exclusively go after Vader when I play against this deck.
I was going to say there's a lot of cards that will say like spot a blue character, or force strike, turn one of your blue dice, or such and such. Force choke, it's a blue character only. True, you can cheat with Mind Probe, but I would always focus Vader just because if he is dead, there's a lot of cards that just don't happen because you can't spot a blue character, you can't proc a blue die, you can't do a blue thing, and it makes it much harder to put equipment onto a Tusken Raider late game, especially, it's probably going to be like turn 3 or 4, Vader's gone. Well, all that gear that was on him might move over to the Raider, and so now you don't really need Holocron, and there's just a lot of good things that help accelerate your win condition if Vader's not on the field, because he's also not milling your hand out. So there's a couple things to consider. It's probably easier to kill the Tusken Raider, but I feel like Vader is still going to be very dangerous because all of his cards are still available because of the blue access.
Yeah, and like you were saying, if they're spending time having to holocron out things onto the Tusken Raider, you're getting set up much faster and being able to have time to disrupt them even more. That's why I go after Vader first. I don't even care what they're putting on the Tusken Raider. Like, they could fill him up with upgrades, and I'm still going after Vader first.
All right, so now that we've covered the Vader Raider deck and we wrap the show up, do you guys have anything you want to discuss before we get into some of the housekeeping?
So we brought this deck up because a lot of people have seen and have asked, like, what is this deck? We aren't actually showcasing it, but we wanted to share it with you guys to bring attention to it and let you know, like, this is popular. It's somewhat on the easier side to play for the most part, and this is also a term I like to use, is sort of a gatekeeper deck. This deck should be popular enough that you should try and make sure whatever deck you're trying to run does have answers for it, because some rogue player sitting in front of you who brings this deck might cause you a lot of trouble. And if you can't beat this, you might have trouble with other decks as well. So we do see this deck being popular. We don't necessarily see it being meta-defining as time goes on, but we'll see.
Yeah, I'm in complete agreement with you. This is a flashy deck, and it's a fun deck for somebody to play, but it is very one-dimensional, and you do have to know how to beat it. But again, it's not something that's going to be 50% of the field in a tournament or anything like that. But you do have to be able to play against it. It's something that will show up, and it's something that if you're not prepared for it, it will eat you alive, right?
Yeah, it's a fun deck, and sometimes it does just steal a win, like right out of the gate. You'll lose a character to this deck on turn 2, and it's just disgusting. But that also happens against Poe and other characters. So this isn't the only quick draw, out there.
So what are you guys going to be running this weekend or within the next week for your testing purposes? I am going to be testing my coveted, well, maybe not coveted, but 4 Stormtroopers, as it's been lovingly called. And I love the Stormtrooper aggro deck. I think it's amazing. And I'm also running Padme and Leia Super Mill, which I posted earlier on the Facebook page. And I'm really excited to get those 2 decks out and just kind of have some fun with that.
I'm probably going to be sticking with, if I go to the tournament this weekend, sticking with my mono blue Qui-Gon, Padawan, and Rey deck. I'm having a lot of fun with that and very surprised with it, especially since it was just a deck that I kind of threw together with what I had. And it's turned out to be an exceptionally fun deck to play. A lot of different lines in the deck, and I'm going to give that some more time and some more testing.
So I have been testing a lot of decks lately. I was running a Jabba Dooku deck. I was running I tried a Jabba Phasma deck that was pure control, that used cards like Local Garrison, Occupation, and Crime Lord to win. And I had some fun results, but amusingly, things that I liked about my Dooku Jabba deck and things that I liked about my Phasma Jabba deck kind of overrode each other, and I've actually created what I can honestly call my Jetpack Jabba deck, which, that name was originally a joke and honestly a misunderstanding of the way modified sides work with resolution cards, but I am eager to share with you guys if this deck is successful after the tournament tomorrow. My Jabba Phasma, ranged but also flamethrower, heavy damage deck. I have a lot of reasons for why the cards are in there to deal with a lot of situations, and I'm really super happy with it. And then I'm also bringing another deck for my buddy to come and play, and close to what Vader Raider does. I like a version right now that's mono blue, as hard as it is to give up backup muscle. I have a all blue Dooku Kylo deck that, does the mercy stuff, does the power of the Force, uses pretty much every blue upgrade available. It's a little bit slower. You lose cards like Force Strike, but Dooku's harder to kill. Kylo is reasonably difficult to kill. Kylo's special I find to be really good, especially people play expensive cards in their deck. Kylo special rips apart Vader Raider very often. It's also really good against Crime Lord decks, but I'm gonna see how my friend does with a pure villain blue deck.
Awesome. That actually sounds really fun. I might steal that from you. All right, so thank you everyone for joining us. We are the Knights of Ren, and you can find us on Facebook at Knights of Ren Podcast, Twitter, KOR Podcast. We have a Discord channel, YouTube channel, Instagram, Twitch, all that good stuff. All those notes are going to be in the show notes. You can find the links there. We are going to be wrapping up the sticker giveaway on Discord. By the time this podcast gets posted, we will have announced who has won that sticker, but we are going to start a very special giveaway we've been really excited about to announce, and we have one final set of the Rey and Kylo Gen Con promos. And what we're going to do is have a lot of fun with this giveaway. So we're going to give it away after Christmas. So we're going to give you 2 weeks, and what we want you to do is build a deck. It can be fun, it can be silly, it can be very aggressive, high play, whatever you want it to be. Build a deck and just email that deck list to us, give it a name, tell us what the strategy is, and we're going to pick our favorite deck out of all of the ones that are sent. So go to cardgamedb.com. We definitely recommend. That's one of the easier places to build a deck, and they'll have the entire printout of all the cards. Copy and paste that and email knightsofrenpodcast@gmail.com, and just have fun with this. We may not pick the most efficient. We might pick something that's hilarious. We don't know. It's totally community based. So like I said, have fun with this. Send us your email, send us your decks. We are super excited to see what people are playing, what they're running, and all kinds of stuff like that. So with all that being said, thank you everyone so much for listening. Please give us a review on Facebook or iTunes. We will really appreciate it, and it helps grow the community and get the name out about Star Wars Destiny. So with that being said, everyone have a great week, and may the Force be with you.